Okay, we have a green light, so I'll call the September 10th, 2019 Nightmost Public Works Board meeting to order. Misty, can you take the roll call, please?
Ms. Schmidt?
Here.
Mr. Temperley?
Here.
Mr. Pickard?
Here.
And Mr. Lair previously informed staff that he'd be unavailable this evening.
Item 3, correction and approval of the minutes of July 9th, 2019 and August 13th, 2019. We don't have quorum to approve either of them. Everyone in this room either was not at one of the meetings, so we need at least 3 people to approve the minutes. Is that correct, Dan? Yeah. So we'll have to pass those for the next meeting. Item 4, questions and public comment. There's nothing but staff here tonight, so we'll get right into item 5, updates on Main Street, Mulberry Street, and the 2019 street maintenance projects. Either Paul or Dwayne. Either one.
If you want in?
You can start.
I'll start. Okay, I'll start from the end and move backward.
All right.
So the end is that on Main Street, we'll start on. What we learned today is that they anticipate being done for the season somewhere around November 1st. And then they'll pull out for the winter and then start as soon as they can in the spring. Understanding is right now that they are going to do utilities up to Pinnacle Street. And then they will do paving as far south of Woodland Beach Road as they possibly can. This is a little bit farther than what they anticipated, but that's good. We'll take that. And then they'll basically blacktop from where they end on Pinnacle to where they end south of Woodland Beach, and that's the way it'll sit then for the winter.
Let me make a comment on that.
Hmm?
They made the water main connection and the sanitary sewer connection today. So, and all the service laterals are in. So all the city parts of the project are done for 2019. They have a little bit of stormwater to do, and which should be done tomorrow. And then they'll finish the base. And so then Friday, they're going to pave the west lane from Keys all the way down to pretty close to Pinnacle. And then the next week, they'll come back and pave the other lane going north. And then they'll do the curbs and the sidewalks and the driveways. And then they'll do the streetlights and the grading and seating and attaching all the side roads. And so the vast majority of the main stuff will be done mid-October, but they'll have the cleanup and that type of stuff. And, you know, like, they have to go back and fix stuff here and there. You've probably noticed they're still back in phase 1 doing some work. But when you look at it and you say November 1st, they will be done. But the vast majority of the real intense stuff will be done early to mid-October.
Okay.
So they're moving along very well, very well. Some of this is weather permitting. This is going to be a rough week, but, you know, they'll stick around. I just want one item of note, and this will be coming up at the council meeting next week, and that's the bike lanes, particularly the ones on the western side of Main Street. And one of the things that we need to be really aware of is that bike lanes are for bikes only. And so we will be asking the council to consider no parking signs on the west side of Main. And we're still looking at how to handle the the right turn lane at the intersection of Main and Lake. Because people are kind of using the bike lane to turn. So I bring those to your attention, you know, partially because I'm hoping people watching this will understand that and realize that you cannot park there.
Want to hear a funny story on that?
Sure.
When Rudy was on, we talked about painting bike symbols here and there, and both he and I said, well, that's stupid. The bikers know those are bike lanes, but apparently the
It's not for the bikers.
Yeah.
The-
So,
Actually, the no parking on South Main was agreed to when we selected, and you guys were part of that when we selected
Right.
how the lanes would be done and how the bike lanes would be done. You remember we did a survey and,
Nobody wanted the street to widen any more than it is
right,
now.
and they selected the east side to be where the parking was.
Yeah.
So from that standpoint, the council is just following up on what we'd agreed to do when we signed the contract for South Main Street. Paul's other comment is, there are a couple small issues like that where people are using the bike lanes to turn on when they're not supposed to. There are a couple signage issues that we're trying to figure out. Some of them are really difficult. I don't know if we'll ever really come up with an answer like in the annex there. But we're working on those.
Okay. 'Cause I was going to bring that up myself, because someone asked me what happened to the bike lanes. I said, well, they should be there. When I checked it out, yeah, they're there, but there's cars and a boat trailer and. So,
Well, technically, it hasn't been turned over to us yet, so it's kind of, do we have the authority? And
okay,
like the one, we definitely need to pass an ordinance at council to be able
Alright.
to finalize it, so.
okay.
Then just one last question, this is based on phone calls. The trees will go in, likely not this year anymore, though, but there are trees that will be going along the street.
Yes, trees will be going along the street, and we're working with Rob. Probably about 50% of them will go in the fall of 2020, and then 50% of them in the spring of '21.
Okay.
Are we still doing the,
Trees that would be on the property owner's front lawn?
Yes, we do, but
Okay.
that's separate. We'll do that anytime now, as long as Rob has kind of been waiting for the project to come to a stop in certain areas before he starts going back and saying, hey, do you want trees?
okay,
Because, water and sewer laterals and all that other digging, it's better to wait until they were done.
Yeah.
So that's South Main. Mulberry Street then, little different story. Latest we got, actually got from the project manager today, is that the contracted completion date is to be September 28th. They're anticipating it'll be mid-October before they're done, and I will just quote her by saying that's her best assessment at this time. So weather will have some influence there, I'm sure, too. But that one is a little more behind. I think we talked a little bit about some of the issues. They had some dewatering issues, a lot of groundwater. We had some utility conflict issues. For example, Frontier didn't get all their stuff out of the way as fast as they wanted. Just some other things have come up along the way that have pushed that one back. I think it's somewhat safe to say they're a little bit back on track right now, but of course then we get an inch and something of rain when we're trying to grade that, so, go ahead.
When you say that, there are a couple things. The original contract date is September 28th. But you get days for bad weather and other types of delays. And so they filed for those. So they're actually, based on the days that we know that they're going to get there into October, and they probably get a couple more before then. So saying they're into mid-October isn't really out of line with what the contract was anyways. They probably could have been done faster if certain things had been done in a different order, but Paul's right, they did hit a lot of unusual circumstances. Water mains that are at 4 feet aren't typical. They were probably installed because they had lead joints. They were probably installed in like 1890, so nobody had any idea where they were at. And having two water mains over the top of each other is not normal. So there are just certain things like that. And then whenever you're boring in conduit, you don't know exactly where that conduit's going to end up. So if Frontier is telling us that their guy bored it in at 82 inches and it ends up being at 47, that's not that unusual. It's a little bit far off, but it's not that unusual.
Don't they have sensors when they're doing directional boring?
They do for direction, not necessarily for depth, at least, because it's basic, a plastic conduit, and what they do is they track the drill bit, and they can't always be accurate on how deep that is. They have a pretty good sense, but I would say, a tolerance of plus or minus 6 to 8 inches either way is not unusual. So they typically go deeper than they have to.
Yeah. Oh, that's quite a bit off.
You hit a rock and it goes up and down. Yeah, it's not perfect. It's a nice way to do it, but it's not perfect. I just, one more, and I apologize for doing this, but one of the examples of what Steve's talking about is at the Madison Street intersection. There were water mains there that, number one, we didn't know we were there, and once we found them, we weren't sure where the heck they went to or came from. Again, they were put in there a long time. We made some assumptions on where they may have come from, but it took a little while to decipher that and figure out what's live, what's good, what's bad, and that happened on this job. It also happened on the South Main Street job. It's like remodeling an old house. You find stuff you weren't really anticipating. So it takes time to figure that out. So that's Mulberry. On to the maintenance projects, and we'll turn that over to you, Dwayne.
And so, maintenance projects, I just want to say to everyone out there, thank you for your patience so far, and continued patience would be appreciated. We are in the midst of the maintenance program. Actually, today, the county did the chip seal on several streets. That material will stay there for most of the week. The city Streets Department is looking to possibly sweep that up Friday if the weather cooperates. That way, the no parking signs, temporary no parking signs could be removed on those streets for the weekend. At least that's the tentative goal at this point on those chip seal streets. Wolf Paving, I should step back. Street Department, Schweigert Concrete has been doing a lot of concrete work. The Street Department has been doing a lot of work on this. And today, Wolf Paving moved in. Actually, they've been here a couple times, but they moved in to do quite a bit of the mill and overlay paving that began this morning. And they'll be continuing to probably be paving here, depending on the weather and pending the rain, the better part of this week and probably into next week. Those streets, they were on Giles today. They were on Lilac today. We're on Meadow Ridge. They're probably on Phillips and Harvey as we speak. Again, pending weather, that will continue. A number of other streets that were pulverized have had binder course put on about a week or so ago. Those projects will continue. Sidewalk repair, we're working with Schweigert Concrete we're providing them with a list. They'll be doing sidewalk repairs in the next 2 months. So those will continue. The street department hopes to get to start on the library grading for the parking lot, possibly next week, pending weather. Any other maintenance program items that I'm missing? So quite a bit happening here this weekend and until November 1st, probably. Any specific questions?
No.
Just in general on the street construction projects, how many lead service laterals were replaced between King and Mulberry? Approximately.
Wayne has it somewhere.
Dwayne has it somewhere in some spreadsheet. Boy, off the top of my head, Mark, I'm going to say dozen? Couple dozen?
It's more than that.
More than that.
Probably 30.
I'm just trying to think of the list. We can get that for you. Be pretty
That's
accurate.
just- Around 30 is a good enough number for me.
Okay. It might be a tad higher than that, but yeah.
Yeah, because we used all 100 of the grants we had,
300.
and that would be 100 people, so
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, right.
But not all of those were on those two projects either.
No.
No, that's why I said it, you know, it's at least 30. Might be higher, but.
Okay.
We don't have any money left, that
Yeah.
I know.
We'll find that out, though, and send it out to you. That's a good number to know. There were quite a few.
As of last, 58 as of last week on Madison, or as of the end of August when we sent this last report in.
On Main and Mulberry.
I mean,
Wow.
58, Main and Mulberry.
Well,
Yeah.
It's probably just a tad under half of what we've done.
There were 109 as of the first of the year,
Uh-huh.
and 58 more on Main and Mulberry, and I know there's been 2 on Oak. I don't know if there's been any more. So 60, about 170 completed, or at least partially completed.
Not all the ones on Main and Mulberry got grants though, right?
Correct.
Correct.
Some of them just replaced their own. There were some surprises, like people had copper in the house, but when you actually dug it up at the ground, there was lead.
Yeah, that was my house as well. There's copper inside, but the outside lines are still lead. Any more questions or comments? All right, we'll go on to item 6, discussion and recommendation on sewer usage charge adjustment. We have a review letter from Strand covering all of our operational expenses and capital budget and predicted increases. And so it's on the website if anyone's interested in reviewing it. So I'll turn over the presentation to staff then.
Okay, I'll just make a quick introduction, and then Kevin and I are going to switch places here real quick. But as you know, we're reviewing all of our utility rates. We've looked at water, and we've got a rate pending at the PSC. Electric, we're okay for a little while here, so we're comfortable with letting that go for some time. But we thought we'd better take a look at sewer. And so Kevin Hopkins, who is with Strand, has been working with us quite some time and is very familiar with our plant, and he did all of the work on this. I will do one of these cut to the chase things. If you look at the letter, one of the last section of that, we're anticipating a total rate increase of just over 8% over across the board, if you will. And the impact for a typical residential customer, that comes into about $2 a month or so. So I'll start there, and then we'll let Kevin describe how we arrived at that, and I guess just generally what the financial condition of the plant is. So we'll swap spots here. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, I'm Kevin Hopkins from Strand. I've been here, it's been a while since the last time, I think the last rate update was here. So I've got about 11 tables from the letter report that we sent a couple weeks ago.
just before you start, what you have in here is what percentage? It's
8.
Is it 8 or 4?
Yeah, actually, I get maybe about 8 tables in, it'll be a little bit clearer. It's, for residential, it's more like 2 to 3% increase.
That's what I thought. Okay. Thank you.
Oh, and if I misspoke, I apologize. I'm seeing 4% residential and overall 8%, but we'll get to that. We'll get more
Right.
specific, Mark.
Yeah, okay.
So to start with are the current rates, and I think everybody's aware, we've got meter charges based on the size of the meter. Volume charge currently is $7.15 per 1,000 gallons. Surcharges apply to any domestic strength, or anything greater than a domestic strength waste. And we list the concentrations for biochemical oxygen demand, or BOD, total suspended solids, or TSS, and total phosphorus, or TP. Those are the things that we measure, and typically those are going to apply to the industrial clients in the city. There's also a couple of charges, one for holding tank waste and another for septage. The city has the ability to accept those wastes, but historically has not. And to be honest, at those prices, most haulers are not going to want to dump their waste at the treatment plant anyways. But those costs are based on the volume and meter and surcharges listed above. So next table. Basically, we want to start with known values, and those are the existing users based on user class, residential, commercial, industrial, public authority. Sometimes there's are other users, none in this case. The volume that was sewer volumes that were charged last year based on based on user class. And then we've got quantities for the various surcharges, the BOD, solids, and phosphorus. And those are known quantities based on sampling that was done at a couple of the industries in town. And then also the revenue based on user class. And the total is $1.692 million collected in 2018.
As fast as I can.
So to come up with the user charge system, we basically need to know the operation and maintenance costs, debt service, replacement costs, and capital fund improvements or capital fund allocations. So the big main item in that list is the O&M costs, and that's including labor, retirement costs, Social Security, chemicals, power. There's some administrative costs in here that are allocated towards the treatment plant. Quite a few things in here. I don't want to go through each one, but there's a number of items in there, and then I think the total is 1.18, excuse me. So again, with the O&M costs, we also look at the debt service costs. You've got 3 loans currently that will retire in 2020, or 2 loans that will retire in 2021, and then another loan that was just started this year. The test year that we look at is basically now the middle of 2019 in anticipation of the rates being adopted this summer or in the next month. In this case, we use 2020 for the debt service because that's going to be the higher of the 2 years. So instead of the 143,000 listed for 2019, we looked at 2020, which is $279,000 for debt service. So we included that in the analysis. And as you can see, when the loans are retired for the first 2, the Clean Water Fund and the State Trust Fund, your debt service payments drop off considerably, but who knows, other projects may come up, so I'll stop there. Again, in addition to the O&M and debt service, we've got a capital improvements project fund, and there's a number of items on here, including computers, an excavator, projects on various streets. The total for the 6 years that are listed here is $2.112 million, and that's divided over a 10-year period. So we're basically allocating about $211,000 per year for the capital improvements fund. So for the total, the other item that I didn't go into detail here is the replacement fund. The DNR, as part of the Clean Water Fund program, requires communities to set aside so much per year for replacement of equipment. And I can show a table at the end of this if you like, but the allocation per year is about $93,000. So the total revenue requirements for 2019 was estimated at about $1.767 million. Keep flipping the tables.
Yeah, I was
on
going
you.
to say, there should be a lot of easier.
So, with the costs for O&M, debt service, replacement, and the capital improvement allocation, the total, again, is on the second from left-hand column is 1.76 million. And we allocate those costs based on whether it should be allocated to customer or meter charge, flow, BOD, or solids, or phosphorus. And so that's how we allocate those. For instance, if we're looking at, a lot of the O&M costs are basically overhead costs that you would have regardless, so we may put more of that on the meter charges than flow. It varies, and, there's a certain rhyme and reason to how those are allocated, but it'll vary. I'm going kind of fast through this, so if there's any questions on it, just, And so with the allocation, with the costs that we have for 2019, these are the meter volume and surcharge rates that we had come up with based on the revenue requirements for 2019. And the meter charges for typical residential went up to 7 to 8%, volume charges up 2%, surcharges anywhere from 1 to 9%, depending on whether it's BOD, solids, or phosphorus. And then the holding tank waste charges and the septage charges went up considerably, and those are, those are based on both meter volume and surcharge rates.
So you have here that the meter charges, which is, I think of a monthly fixed charge, is going up 7 to 8%, whereas the variable charge is going up 2%. And I'd like, from a policy standpoint, I would prefer if they went up at the same amount, or the fixed charge went up less than the variable amount. But I just want to make a point that that's what's in here right now, and I would prefer them to be more equal.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we see often is with a rate increase, particularly with a volume charge increase, is that people will dial back on their water use, at least initially. So this basically helps alleviate that strain on the sewer budget, if you will, because you have that fixed charge. I think and you'll see this in a slide or two, that the net increase is small overall for a typical user. So that's why this was developed that way. I mean, we can certainly modify this so that the rate is more evenly distributed between the meter and the volume charge. But
Is that something you easily do if there's a motion later in this meeting to balance the increase for usage as well as?
yeah,
fixed?
it's not a huge, it's not an onerous thing to do, but again, it's more of a protection for the budget overall, at least initially. Again, we often see water use decrease over, after a rate increase. Whether you're going to see that with this particular overall rate increase, I don't know, but
Let's wait to get a motion on the table, Mark, then if you want to make that motion.
We don't have a motion yet even
Yeah,
for
yeah,
that.
yeah.
But later.
Later, all right.
I'll just make a quick comment. I think both you guys have been around, and Vicky too, long enough to know that there's kind of a shift in electric and water to go to more of an increase in the fixed charges for exactly the reason Kevin mentioned, is that's a guaranteed dollar amount. What we're seeing in electric, for example, is that as energy conservation efforts kick in and people use less energy, of course, the utility collects less revenue. And so the move has been to put more of that in the fixed charge so that the utility can have some assurance that they will have X amount of revenue. So in as much as I understand your point, this is kind of the way everything is going, where
Yeah,
the
we
fixed charge
understand
is
that,
picking
but
up
there's
more
also
money.
arguments
The other way.
the other way as well.
Yeah, and
which-
I'm not arguing with
about
you.
this
I'm
later.
just-
Yeah, we'll talk about this.
I'm just
when we get to the
explaining
motion.
the
Yeah, we
situation.
understand that,
Yeah.
but
Okay. Next one?
So this is just basically a check to make sure that we're close to the total revenue requirements. And actually with this analysis or this iteration, if you will, that it's a little bit under, it's within 99.8% of the total dollar amount required, or estimated dollar amount required. The other thing that we need to look at is to make sure that you're meeting the debt coverage ratio required, and that's a state requirement of 1.25, and basically that's your total revenue requirements minus your O&M expenses and divide that by your debt expense. And the whole point of that is just to make sure that you've got enough money set aside to pay off your debt service. And in this case, we came up with a factor of 2.09, which is a good debt coverage ratio to have. So again, what's the impact on the various users? So we looked at, for residential, for instance, we look at annual volumes of 35,000, 50,000, 60,000 gallons. The meter charges based on a 3/4 inch size meter, volume charge, and then the total annual and monthly charge. And with the proposed rates that you saw in 2 tables ago, we're looking at, again, 3 to 4%, depending on the volume used.
And the last rate increase was 2 years ago, is that correct?
2017, yes,
So this would be on the order of 2% per year?
approximately, yeah. Yep. Which is, all things considered, not a terrible increase for,
Right.
I'm sure that phone and cable and
yeah.
other things are going up at a much higher rate. And then just to give any commercial or industrial users or public authority, these are just, they're not based on any particular industry or a commercial entity. It's just some approximate increases based on the volume used. And also, we included some surcharge amounts, I think. Maybe we didn't include a surcharge amount for the industrial, but certainly those will go up also. And the last table I have is just kind of a comparison of where Lake Mills is, or will, maybe with some other communities of similar size. So we looked at City of Evansville, City of Edgerton, Mayville, Jefferson, Delavan, and City of Toma. And would you mind zooming that in a little bit? So we've got the volume charges as well as the meter charges, and currently you're at about $581, and that's comparable to some of these communities. There's published sewer rates for basically just about every community that participates in the survey. Those are typically published every 3 years. I think the 2019 version has not been published yet, but, so I guess the long and short of it is you're not atypical for the rates that we're looking at.
Any more questions? No more questions, so we have a prepared motion, 19-9-1, sewer usage charge adjustment approval or recommendation to the city council. I'll entertain a motion to approve so we can start discussion.
Motion to approve motion 19-9-1.
Second.
All right, so now it's up for discussion. So, Mark, I know you have some things to say, and
So, yes, I understand the utilities perspective as to having a stable source of income.
but when we hear things like they're going to reduce using things, to us, that means putting off expansion projects, and
Well,
it's, yeah.
From the numbers in the study, I saw that something like 80% of the revenue is from residential. And residential, you know, the toilet, shower, cook, drink, whatever, you know, yeah, that can change some, but it's not going to change a huge amount. It's not going to change drastically. And the conservation, the usage going down is a good thing. If it weren't for that, we would have had to expand our sewage treatment plant by now, because we talked about doing that in the early 2000s, but because the usage has gone down due to things like water conserving toilets and shower heads, we can avoid spending a whole bunch of money. So it's good for the utility, it's good for the customer to not use a lot of water, a lot of sewer. And then rate increases are always hard for the elderly people on fixed income, which typically don't use as much sewer and water as other people. So if you increase the fixed part of the bill more than the variable part of the bill, it affects people on a fixed income more than otherwise.
Sure.
So
your direction is, or you want to make an amendment to this?
yeah, and I don't know exactly how to. I mean, what I would like to have happen is that the variable part of the rates be increased no more than the fixed part of the rates, the monthly fixed part of the rates.
Or the same rate increase. The same rate increase for the fixed rate should match the variable rate.
So I'm
And
sure
by variable, you're talking about the usage, right?
Yeah, the usage, yeah.
Okay.
So I think I kind of need a motion to that effect, Mark.
yeah, maybe Kevin, you can tell me what the right words are in terms of variable or usage or fixed or monthly or.
Basically, you want the percentage increase for the meter charges, you want to be comparable to the percent increase for the volume charges.
Yeah,
I mean, the net, from our perspective, the net goal, and I think the city's perspective, the net goal is that you collect enough revenue
Of
to meet the
course.
projected
Right.
of
requirements.
course.
And we can, it's not difficult to make that change.
By adjusting the allocations.
So,
Exactly.
so you could have two presentations. You keep this one in case the council has different ideas and likes your idea better, or they like Mark's idea better. Does that make sense?
Should I have colored these slides a little bit better? It would have made them more presentable. Sorry.
For our viewers at home, the meter charge, what is the current meter charge for residential property, and what are you proposing for the new meter charge?
1563 currently is per month is the meter charge, and the proposed is 1667. So that's about a 7% increase.
And about $1 and something?
Yeah, $1.04, and then the volume charge is, as proposed, is going from 7.15 to 7.29, or 14 cents a gallon, or 14 cents a thousand gallons. That's about a 2% increase.
So if you were a residential property that used 3,000 gallons a month, could you tell us approximately what the total cost change would be?
Based on the proposed rates as
Right.
presented, 3,000 gallons a month?
Yeah.
Yeah, that, if you look in that table 11, 35,000 gallons annually would be about a 4% increase total.
Which,
It's about 3,000 gallons a month, a little under 3,000 a month.
Yeah,
So
so
rather
it's
than talking-
$2 a month,
$2 a month, okay.
correct.
So $1 of that is the fixed charge, or a little less, or a little more than $1 is the fixed charge. A little more than that is the volume charge.
Would it help if you write that, show it up there?
So for somebody to conserve enough to make a difference, if they're using 3,000 a month, and that's not a lot of usage, what's being proposed on adjusting the fixed versus the volume charges, the meter versus the volume, I'm not sure that a property owner is really going to see much of an effect from making that change
Changing the fixed or the usage?
by adjusting it the way that Mark is discussing versus their actual, the way that you're proposing it. I'm not sure that it's really going to change in reality for the property owner one way or the other.
It really shouldn't, because, I mean, we've got to make sure that we're collecting enough, the city's collecting enough revenue. So whether we allocate it to the meter or the volume, it all kind of comes out in the wash. I mean, you can tweak it so that more goes to volume charge, but, I'm not sure in the end if that really matters.
If this is reviewed in 2 or 3 years, and the utility needs more revenue, then it's adjusted, and adjusted both the volume charge and the fixed meter charge. Instead of, the utility can increase the rate whenever it wants to, whenever there's a shortfall. It's not like the utility is going to have a shortfall that they can't do anything about, as long as it gets approved.
Yeah, so you're talking really a philosophical
Yeah.
approach here, that those should balance out, because it may help the elderly or another group where the way it's set up, it might penalize them.
And the city, through WPPI and Focus on Energy, encourages people to use things like water-saving shower heads, I believe. So,
Yes, right, yeah.
So we do want people to decrease their usage, right? It is good for everybody. Agreed? As long as we can cover,
Financially,
right,
yeah,
by adjusting rates accordingly.
yeah.
I guess the one comment I have is that if you are going to increase it by 4%, and I'm not saying that it's not, that wouldn't be a hardship for some folks, it's not a significant increase. So whether you allocate it to the meter charge or the volume charge, at the end of the day, it's not a huge increase.
I know, but 2 years ago, what was the ratio? 2 years from now, what will be the ratio? And it adds up over time.
Sure.
Sure, and different things could affect that in the future, too. You know, right now, like I say, the trend is to put more into fixed charge and less into volume charge. That may turn around. You know, or it may go drastically the other way. I mean, keep in mind that our plant is aging, and we are likely up against some DNR requirements that may cost us a few dollars also. And so then we need to know that we've got a funding source for that sort of thing. The only comments I'd make is two things. One is that we're working really hard to keep all of these increases as low as possible, and I just ask you to take a look around at what we're doing with replacement of sewer and updating the plant and that sort of thing. And then the second part of it is that we want to review this on a very regular basis, so we don't get in a situation where we wait 5 years and then really sock it to somebody. You know, and I know that as soon as the word increase comes out, people get upset. I get that. And it you know, they should. I mean, it's still real money. So, you know, whether we're debating more fixed or more volume, I think we also want to ask you to keep your eye on the fact that we're going to be reviewing rates on a regular basis, and there are going to be revenue requirements in the future that we're anticipating will have an effect.
Right now, how long do you anticipate before we'd be reviewing this again? You know, is this good for 2 years or 3 years or?
You know, I think the fact that you've looked at it twice in the last 2 years, I think, I wouldn't anticipate you having to do it again for another couple of years. There are some things on the horizon that Paul alluded to. You know, there's phosphorus regs that the city is going to have to follow in the near future. That's could very well be require some capital improvements at the treatment plant. The age of the plant, I mean, your typical plants last 20 years, or they're designed for 20 years. You're going on 30 years at this point. The loadings at the plant have increased over time. I think, you know, you could potentially be looking at a major expansion in the near future, both to meet the loadings and also the phosphorus regs. So I think in the next 2 years, you're you know, assuming these rates are adopted or some form of these rates are adopted, you're probably fine, but you could be looking at increases farther down the road.
And keep in mind, we really look at all utility rates or our revenue and expenditures. Betsy would probably say every day, but we review those to some extent every year. It's when we get into whether or not we need a rate increase that we dig a little deeper, and I think every other year is kind of your recommendation. And see which is what we're probably looking at with every utility. Every year, really taking a good deep dig into where we're at. So.
I kind of do that myself. I look at my payroll and how
Yes.
can I make this bigger?
In April, we had a cash flow analysis report that recommended a sewer increase in 2020 of 12% and further increases on the following years. Kevin, I don't know if you're familiar with that report at all.
Is that the one from Ellers you're referring to?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, so I don't know if anybody has any idea why that would have been so much different than, 12% versus 4%. And at the time I said that, it was a cash flow analysis and it showed the cash flow balance of the sewer utility going up and up and up, which I questioned. And the statement at the time was, well, that can be reviewed and adjusted. So I guess, does anybody have any comment on that earlier number or not?
Yeah, and I think all those numbers for all utilities were kind of based on, I wouldn't say worst-case scenarios, but information they had at the time for what we anticipated for expenditures and projects and that sort of thing. This, I would think, is a much more refined number. my other reaction would be we're doing better than that report says we should be doing. So I view that as a positive thing, but I don't know where every number that's in the Eller's report comes from or how they set it up and that sort of thing. But
This is a more near-term analysis,
yeah,
too.
that too.
Sure.
Can you mention the two words again that you, meter charge and flow, is that?
Volume charge.
Volume.
Yeah, fixed and volume.
So the motion it is to approve his current rate proposal. So if you, I mean, I don't see any harm having two different proposals on paper when it goes to council. So if you want to make a motion to, I guess, table this, then have him come back with another rate proposal where it's more even out, because this isn't time critical, is it?
Well,
Well,
doesn't have to be done yesterday, but, we don't want
next
to put it
month,
off for 6 months.
If you have, yeah, I don't see this dragging out for month to month to month.
So if we could just table this at this point and then
I guess,
verbally ask for a,
yeah,
okay?
Just give us some direction, as you have,
yeah,
and then we'll come back with a revised option.
Before we table, I have a couple of other
all right.
questions or comments. Kevin, in your overview, your first couple of pages of your letter, you mentioned UV disinfecting. And I was wondering if that was built into this rate or if that was not, because I know it's not on the capital page.
Yes, let me. So that came out of the replacement fund allocation.
Is there something you want me to zero in?
Yeah, it's on the left-hand side of the,
What page was that?
it's table, or attachment. Attachment 2. So this is the replacement fund, and it includes equipment from the 2001 expansion, the major expansion back in '92, and then there's some equipment that was still used prior to the '92 expansion. So in the last user charge system update, we had included, well, they're still labeled dechlorination and chlorination equipment. So right now you use gas chlorine and gas chlorine for chlorination for disinfection. And then you've also got a chlorine limit, so you have to disinfect, but you can't discharge chlorine. So there's sulfur dioxide for dechlorination. Both those chemicals are not fun to work with, and Bill Kiesling will tell you that. And we've looked at replacing that with UV equipment for a number of years. We provided costs to the city. So in lieu of just putting in the same dollar amount or a similar dollar amount for the chlorination, dechlorination equipment, we got costs to put in UV equipment in anticipation that would be replaced, or the existing disinfection equipment would be replaced in the not too distant future with with UV disinfection. So, and there's a footnote at the bottom of the table. I think it shows up.
UV equipment.
Yeah, maybe if you just want to read it.
UV equipment is anticipated to replace the chlorination and dechlorination equipment. The balance for these two items have increased to be used for the new UV equipment.
And that was the dechlorination and chlorination lines.
Correct, yep. So it's still labeled dechlorination, chlorination, but in fact, the costs are,
Well, there's a capital cost to putting in the UV equipment, correct?
that is correct, yep.
And just, can you give me a ballpark number of what that cost is? Because I haven't heard a number at this board.
I should know that, but I don't have that number handy. I can get it to you.
Ballpark?
The equipment is gonna be, I wanna say in the $150,000 to $200,000 range, plus there's some structural improvements that would have to happen at the existing chlorine tank.
And when is this planned to occur? Is there a plan for this to occur or not? Or is it just kind of building up a balance to do it at some point in the future?
It's the latter. yeah,
Okay.
Just to allocate the money now. I mean, this is more than what it would cost to replace the existing disinfection equipment.
Right.
But I mean, most plants are getting away from the
I understand.
gaseous disinfection.
And I don't think UV was a very popular or viable option 30 years ago when the plant was built.
It really wasn't. I
Right.
mean, I think Madison Met was one of the first plants to install UV, and it didn't really work very well the first time, but they've stuck with UV equipment.
It's gotten better over time, I'm sure.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I would suggest, Paul, that it be in the capital plan, though.
Yeah, and now this will be driven a little bit by the whole phosphorus thing, right? Or is this inevitable?
It would be more driven by a plant expansion.
Okay.
Or if you wanted to just go with this particular project, but we would recommend that it be dovetailed in with the plant expansion whenever that comes.
Okay. Is there any money stuck in here anywhere for the plant expansion, too? I'm a little confused here, because if it's going to be part of the plant expansion, then that's going to be a whole big number, and it would just be rolled into that, and it'd be a loan, or, we'd have to borrow or something, versus, well, we put a little bit of money in here.
Well, this updates to the replacement fund was done in consultation with Bill. He's most familiar with what's needed at the plant. We also added a couple of items in there, some air handling units that are on their maybe their last leg.
Yeah, and that, to me, that's more like replacement, but replacing chlorine with UV is not just a maintenance item.
True, yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it wasn't done as like a sleight of hand here. It was
No, otherwise he wouldn't have been.
It was done just because it would be a replacement item. It's a different technology.
Yeah,
But
okay.
it was one way of allocating the funds for potential future
Yeah.
expansion or future change.
Yeah, and just so you understand, as we look at what's happening to the city as far as new residential, new commercial, that sort of thing, we look very closely at what do we need for electric, water, and sewer? What do we need expansion? Do we need a satellite unit? What do we need? So we don't have any solid numbers, we don't have a solid plan, but certainly as we see things begin to kind of break open here, that's going to be a big part of the discussion.
Right, you get a big development suddenly, and you don't know if that's going to happen 6 months from now or 10 years from now, and
Yeah.
that changes things, of course.
Yeah, I do think it's safe to say that there's probably going to be considerable activity in the next, couple of years, to tell you the truth. Things are starting to open up here.
We'll see how the economy goes, huh?
Yes, exactly. I mean, we could be looking at, a nice period of growth, and all of a sudden, 2008, so,
Yeah.
understood.
So it's been a while since I tabled a motion. Do we need a motion to table it? Okay.
So this has Kevin's numbers as far as comparison to other utilities, plus I found some online, and I called a couple of cities, and just, there's some higher, and there's quite a few lower than Lake Mills, and just to get a number instead of just doing you can look at the graph there, and Lake Mills is at the very top, and you can kind of see the bar chart there. But to just get a number that you can measure, I took the average and standard deviations of those numbers and then calculated where Lake Mills would lie on the standard normal curve for that, and it would be at 69%. So if you look at average, we're somewhat above average, but obviously 4% is, in 2 years, is not an unreasonable rate increase, and there certainly can be reasons that some communities are higher and some are lower, based upon their, like, for example, our discharge limits are very low, which increases our costs. So just wanted to share that with everyone.
Our ranking could be different next year too, because if you read, our ranking could be different next year, because if you read the paper, a lot of other communities are going through the same thing.
Of course, rates continuously go up. That's
Yeah.
almost like a fact of life, right? So you can say that every year, and this is just a snapshot in time.
No, this is good
Yeah.
information. but-
Yeah. And, if you want to look at current rates, then you look at the 44.23 number, and this, by the way, is based on 4,000 gallons a month. So the fixed meter charge plus the gallon charge together, 44.23 for 4,000 gallons is right now. And right now, you can compare that to the other municipalities. So if you can compare the 44 number or compare the 46 number, it makes a difference about 1% in the percentile number. And most of these are similar-sized communities. Some a little larger, some a little smaller, some relatively close by. So, just wanted to share that since I spent the time doing it.
All right, so I need a motion to table the motion.
Motion to table.
Second.
All right. Roll call vote then on that.
Mr. Temperley?
Aye.
Mr. Pickard?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Motion passed 3-0.
So I'll see this again at the next meeting, or, okay.
Sure.
All right, thanks for being understanding, so. Item 7, recommendations for future agenda. I do not have any. Vicki, Mark, Paul?
Nope, nothing.
All right, then I'll adjourn the meeting.